Hi there Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 161 of Ask Bossk's Bounty. So this is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, leave that question in the comment section below. And also, while you're down there, hit the like button if you enjoy the video. With all that being said, I just want to say a big thank you to my son, Little Bossk, for creating this awesome little setup of the Endor bunker here. He now owns this Endor bunker with the Rebel Commando in disguise. It wasn't going to stay in my possession for too long, let's face it. But I want to say a big thank you to him because he created this awesome little scene here. He's really enjoying the set, and you can see how much enjoyment it would bring a child, and also how cool it looks all set up on a shelf or something. So thank you, Little Bossk, for that. And with all that being said, let's get straight on to the first question. Josh Butt says, cheers Tim and happy 2023 to you. Question for next week: why do you think the ATST and the new Slave 1 don't have carded figures, but the bunker and speeder bike do? All of the playsets and vehicles in recent years have had a carded figure in, and a year when we get a bumper crop comparatively of vehicles and playsets, they start taking carded figures away. Very curious to know your thoughts, thank you. So they said it came down to costs, and you know, obviously the ATST and the Slave 1 would be even more expensive than they already are if they had a carded figure in there. I can't really see it being too much more expensive, to be honest, but I think the real reason is basically, I don't think they want to firewall a carded figure away in an expensive playset or vehicle or what have you. I think they got a bit of criticism for the Antok Merrick with the X-Wing. Essentially, carded collectors had to buy that X-Wing, which is a repaint, just to get that carded figure, and on the face of it, that is a little bit unfair. So the Slave 1 and the ATST being quite expensive vehicles, I think that's why we're not getting the carded figures inside there. C3PO Concept says, great video sir, with the Endor Han on the way, do you think that a return of the Jedi General Leia could follow? This would give Hasbro a second shot at doing Endor Leia properly, considering it's the same look minus the soft goods poncho, just like Han's coat. Yeah, you would think that's a natural thing for them to do, wouldn't you? I've got to be honest, it's not something that I've heard of for this year, a General Leia. It would be awesome, I would not be against it. We all know that the one here is not good enough, and neither is the Han Solo, so they are redoing Han maybe without the trench coat. I'm really intrigued to see that figure. I hope they reveal it soon, because I want to know what they've done with it. You know, are we going to get a Han Solo with a decent set of legs finally, without the swivel hips and everything, and then they can potentially make other Han Solos maybe using those legs. So really intriguing, that one. But yeah, I mean, the General Leia isn't something that I've heard that they're going to be doing, although it would be a cool thing for them to do. As we know, the Black Series got all new sculpts for the Endor scene figures, which, yeah, bit annoying. Dan Tween says, would swappable heads, helmets be the way to go with troopers like the Mandos we have to get the helmet head scales in correct proportion? Yeah, I think potentially that is the way to go. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because sometimes they get it right and then sometimes they get it horrendously wrong. Like, for example, with this guy here, I think they've got it right. I think the helmet is perfect for this figure here. Whereas with the Axe Woves, it is really, really bad, and they should have stuck with the original idea of having a removable or swappable helmet and head for that guy. So when it comes to clone troopers and things like that, to avoid the oversized helmet, of course, I want to see that Phase 2 clone first of all to see what they're doing with it. But ultimately, if it avoids the oversized helmet, then yes, 100% I would go for swappable heads and helmets. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea though. Major Camo says, awesome work VB. Now that we are finally getting a new Phase 2 clone trooper, what trooper are you hoping Hasbro will do next? For me, it would either be a newly tooled Snow Trooper or a Kashyyyk Trooper. Both of those are solid suggestions. I'd have to go with the Imperial Stormtrooper in his Hoth battle gear, aka Snow Trooper, 100%. He is on my top 25 for the March Madness. He's quite high up in my list. And yeah, if we got a brand newly tooled one of those carded, and then they could do the 4-pack, and yeah, we just need it basically. It'd be awesome. Chris Rook says, hi Bossk, another great video as always. Here's my question. What do you think the chances are that we'll get a Sabine, Wren and Ezra Bridger in TVC, especially knowing that they are going to be in the new Ahsoka show? Well, I think the fact that, you know, if the rumours are true that they are going to be in the Ahsoka show, then that is the sort of clincher for me. I don't think we're ever going to get the Rebels team on Rebels cards necessarily in like more of an animated style. I've always said if we're going to get them, because they've been so late in delivering them, that they're going to have to turn up in new media. So Sabine Wren would probably be the easiest one for them to do. Maybe they could reuse Bo-Katan's body, perhaps. I haven't really compared the armour, but essentially it's Mandalorian armour. I think they could probably get some reuse out of that figure. So Ezra Bridger, it depends how much he is in the show. From what I know about the show, I don't think he's going to be in it too much, but I really don't know too much about it. Riley Bob says, great episode, boss. Question for next week. With Hasbro always talking and TVC community always asking about balancing the scales, is there any way, for lack of better words, forcing Hasbro's hand in balancing the scales? I know they say vote with your wallet, but the scales are so out of whack, even balancing would seem overwhelming. Imagine TVC with a Black Series budget. Oh man, TVC with a Black Series budget is what dreams are made of. No, with all seriousness though, yeah, it potentially could be overwhelming, but I don't think necessarily the amount of figures would go up that we're getting in the year. I think that just the quality would go up in terms of the new tooling. We'd get characters that we've never had before from new media and things like that. That's where the sort of imbalance is. But in terms of forcing their hand, I don't think there's really anything you can do apart from just supporting the line that you collect. I think potentially things could change a little bit this year, because if there's one thing that does force Hasbro's hand, it's profit. And I think the Black Series profit is going to take a bit of a hit this year because of various reasons. The price of the figures, the lack of character sort of depth for what the Black Series collectors want. And also because of the plastic-free packaging. I think they're going to lose a lot of people that just, inbox collectors, of just saying, no, I've had enough. I'm going to go with TVC where I can still see the figure in the bubble or whatever. You know, purely carded or inbox collectors, TVC is the only option for them now. Damon Whitaker says, love your videos, they are very entertaining. Thank you, Damon. He says, question for next week. With the Mandalorian Season 3 trailer dropping this week, how many of the characters featured in the trailer do you think we'll get in the next 2 years? And follow up, which ones? Thanks and keep up the good work. So in the next 2 years, I mean, the sky will be the limit for that, because obviously Hasbro really does support the Mandalorian. I'm sure the Mandalorian Season 3, judging by the trailer, is going to be awesome. I think everyone's most likely going to really enjoy it again. And they'll probably introduce new characters and things like that. Specifically from the trailer, I could imagine them doing some of those repainted Mandos. I think that's pretty obvious for everyone. I do know of one character that is in the trailer that hopefully is coming this year. Other than the Mandalorian himself and the Paz Vizsla. So that's something to get excited about. And Quadzilla1111 says, what are the chances of a Mandalorian 4-pack with the Mandalorians from Season 3 with the multicoloured armour? Hasbro already have the parts and they just need to change the paint. Thoughts? I think what you've just said in your question there, it makes them highly likely, doesn't it? You know, they have the parts, it is a repaint, they like those 4-packs. I could see them doing a Mandalorian 4-pack from the Mandalorian Season 3. I think it would sell like an absolute dream. Imagine, you know, creating a little army of all different coloured Mandalorians. I mean, a lot of people would go for that, I'm sure. Middle-aged Kiwi man collecting Star Wars figures, who was a guest on last night's live stream. Awesome having you on, Jason. Awesome live stream. We had a lot of fun. If you haven't checked it out, it's on the channel if you want to check that out. I'll leave a link in the description below as well. He says, Kia ora Bossk. Great Q&A as always. I watch every week. My question for next week is, we already have some cool stuff revealed for Return of the Jedi 40th, and it's clear there is more to come. Hopefully an unproduced skiff guard. But given we get so few all-new figures in TVC, do you think we are in for a bumper year, or will it come at the cost of figures from the new media? So I think we're already having a pretty bumper year in terms of Return of the Jedi for the things that have been revealed and the things that are starting to show up, like the speeder bike and the playset that you can see in front of you here. Those two things are great additions. ATST for the people that haven't got it, and also the new paint scheme is definitely an upgrade from the previous one. So I think there is still more to come from Return of the Jedi. How much, I'm not really sure. I think, you know, we could maybe see 4, 5, 6 figures, maybe more for this year. That's my prediction anyway. In terms of a bumper year in general, I think the vintage collection for this year is looking pretty good from what I know is coming anyway. And I think it's going to serve a lot of different collectors. So, you know, depending on what you're into, whether it be new media, Disney Plus media that is, or the OT. I think there's going to be, you know, a decent amount for everyone. John Pallett's Miko TVC says, question for you, Tim. If we collectors feel like figure dream packs are the only way to get more 100% newly tooled figures, and we've told Hasbro we want this repeatedly, then why don't you think they are doing it? They've risked other HasLabs and failed. Why do you think they are not doing this? And what do you think needs to be done for them to do it? Thanks, buddy. I'm not really too sure what else can be done to sort of, you know, force the issue. I think so many people like your good self, you know, Chris from Bantha Skull, myself, loads of people have talked about the possibility of, you know, dream figure packs and what have you. I don't really know what is stopping them from doing it. The only thing I can think of maybe is, you know, they're probably struggling on how they're going to execute it. I think we all want different things, and maybe the character selection for a figure dream pack would be something that they're struggling on, and you know, who would they choose to be in there, what would be included, what would they be carded, all those different things they've got to work out. But yeah, I wish they would stop dragging their heels and just do it. Ask the community what they would want from a figure dream pack to start with. Maybe have some kind of forum on it or something, you know, just to put the idea out there. But I don't know, man. Hopefully that sort of thing will come. Francisco Duran says, great video, BB, and a question for next week's video. Would you like an Asajj Ventress and Dirge from the 2D Clone Wars to hit the TVC, or do you believe those would be left in the early 2000s? I would not be against it whatsoever. I've got to admit, if they did do an Asajj Ventress, I would prefer it to be from the Filoni Clone Wars, more of a sort of modern style that's bordering on realistic style, if you know what I mean. But I definitely still wouldn't say no to the 2D versions as well. So, you know, bring them on. Mando Brunt says, hi Tim, hope all is well. Question for next week, although it's probably more advice. How does the Mandalorian figure from the Rescue set compare against previous Mando figures? I'm after a new one, as the one I have does not stand properly and the paint job on the helmet isn't great. I love the look of the new one from the set, especially the soft goods cape. I have all the other set figures in other forms, but effectively, is the set worth it just for the Mando Din Djarin figure? I can't decide. Hoping for some expert advice. Thanks as always for all you do. So I don't know if you've seen my review of that set. It is on the channel. But I've got to say, you know, in all honesty, this Mandalorian figure that came in that set is the best Mandalorian that we've had so far. He has the rocker ankles. His paint scheme is brilliant. I think he's the Series 2 version in terms of his colour scheme. His armour on his legs is a little bit different to ones that we've got. As you said before, you get the soft goods, you get the jetpack, you get the spear, so you get pretty much everything that you would need for the Beskar Mandalorian. So this is definitely the best of the bunch. However, it is in a set that is overpriced. What I would say is that apart from the fact that the packaging is just way too oversized for that set and the price is too expensive, what you actually get in that set is really good. So obviously you get the Mando. I think the damaged Dark Trooper is awesome. Even the sort of fire effects on him is great. Of course you get the Moff Gideon with the soft goods cape as well. A Grogu, which is just the same Grogu but with different hands for his handcuffs and what have you. So to answer your question, you know, if you're just going to buy the set for this figure alone, then no, it's not worth it, because this figure is not worth $74. But the whole set itself isn't worth $74. But if you can handle the price, it is a great set with, you know, some decent upgrades to some already existing figures. And as I say, that Dark Trooper, the battle damaged Dark Trooper is really good, and he goes really well with the standard release of the Dark Trooper. It's quite funny, that set as well, because it was a Pulse exclusive. I think it was even a convention exclusive, wasn't it? And now you can get it on Entertainment Earth. You can pre-order it, and if you did want to, there's an affiliate link in the description below if you did want to order it. But as I say, you've got to get past that price first of all. But you know, I bought it for the review and I'm really happy with the figures that came with it. Interesting question here from Paul Berry. He says, question for next week. With the forthcoming new Clone Trooper sculpt in TVC, would you object to Hasbro reissuing some of the older clones with the new sculpts but retaining the original card backs and VC numbers, perhaps as part of a repack wave? I personally like to upgrade and replace some of my vintage TVC 1.0 figures if the 2.0 reissues are noticeable improvements, and it would be nice to do this with the clones without having to duplicate them all again with new card backs and VC numbers. Ditto for other figures, this approach would work with, such as the Sand Trooper. So I've got to admit, I personally would be against that. I mean, when I look at this one, for example, what's this, VC 15 is it? This is the Clone Trooper now, the Phase 2 Clone Trooper. Now, they are upgrading this figure, so I personally wouldn't want them to stick the new figure on this exact card back with the original number. I think the number in this card back is associated with this figure, and I think that's how Hasbro think as well, because I think they did say that when they significantly update a figure, like, you know, say, I don't know, 80% of it changes or whatever, then it will get a new card back with a new number. I think when they've made very, very slight changes, you know, paint deco updates and whatever, then they've just reissued it. But, you know, for the figure to be an all-new sculpt, it needs a new card back, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. Cadillac Avenger says, hi Tim, loving the videos. Do keep them up. Question for next week. I think a majority agree that many of the original trilogy figures need retooling for the vintage collection. I personally agree with your choices from this week, the original 12. But in the event Hasbro don't do this, what do you think are the chances of them reissuing any of the original trilogy saga figures? I'm new to collecting and I've missed out on so many of the main figures from the original 96, and I'm worried I will never be able to obtain them. So if you're talking about the vintage original trilogy collection, I would say that you could easily pick those up now. You could pick up Han, Luke, Ben Kenobi, Leia. They are really inexpensive on the secondary market. You may even be able to get them at sort of today's retail prices. So if Hasbro don't do them, I don't think you're going to have a problem getting those. I wasn't sure if you meant by your question that you were thinking about the original 96 Kenner figures, where a Luke Skywalker in decent condition, yeah, that would cost you a fair amount, so maybe get the retro collection one. Jay Russell says, hi Tim, question for next week. Hasbro have recently held a brand team Q&A, but no fan streams or events on the horizon for new reveals. When do you think the next fan stream will be? And do you think Hasbro is slowing things down since Wave 1 of this year hasn't really hit retailers yet? I don't think that's the reason. I imagine there's going to be a Star Wars live stream, you know, sometime maybe in the first couple of weeks of February. That's just my guess. It does seem like a while since we've had any decent reveals, doesn't it? But that's my guess. They'll probably do one then, and then I think we've got Celebration. There'll be definitely some reveals for Celebration, and of course, while the whole Mandalorian season 3's on, I'm pretty sure they'll be doing those Mando Wednesdays or whatever they're called, and revealing something each week as well. John, the action figure grader, says, question for next week. Do you feel like TVC 1.0 are dropping in sales prices? It feels like the market is really soft, even for some of those desirable characters. Certainly there are exceptions here and there, but even some unpunched gems are selling for half of where they were 6 months ago or less. Great video, Tim. I don't check the sort of prices as much as you do, buddy, but I think it's inevitable with the cost of living at the moment and all that kind of stuff. The whole fact that the prices of TVC 2.0 have gone up so much, I think, you know, it's inevitable. I think we are losing people from the hobby. People are selling up their collections and things like that. And that's obviously going to drive the prices down. And Scott Whitehouse has a question that's on sort of the same theme. And he says, brilliant and insightful video as ever, Tim. Thank you, Scott. I think Hasbro turned off your camera at the recent Q&A so they couldn't see you rolling your eyes. Quite possibly, my friend. Question for next week. What are your thoughts on the deep discounting we've seen in the last few weeks? Figures are $3.95, $5.95, $7.95 in the UK. Seems to be TVC and the Black Series. Lots of people online talking about prices and waiting for discounts. Can't be good for either line. Cheers, mate. Yeah, at the end of the day, Hasbro need to sort of understand that the prices for these figures is out of control. And they are losing people from the hobby. It is a fact. They really are. It comes hand in hand at the time that everything else in the world is going up in price as well. So, you know, when you're trying to put food on the table, an action figure suddenly becomes, you know, not very important, basically. As for the discounts, I think the ones that have been discounted have tended to be army builder, troopers and things like that, which is a good thing. I think, you know, obviously they get produced in mass quantities because people buy armies and things like that, so maybe that's that. There has been the odd wave as well that have been overproduced, but if you look at the most recent TVC for things that we're pre-ordering for this year, they've been really hard to get hold of, one per customer and all that thing. So I think that's going to end. I think it's going to be difficult to get hold of those Boba Fett's and things like that. I don't think they're going to flood the market anytime soon. Mighty Makoko says, question for next week. Are we getting a second wave of Return of the Jedi retro figures? Do we know when the next wave of new media retro figures are coming? Mando Season 3 or Book of Boba Fett? Will you be getting the wave of retro indie figures? So the second part of your question there, yes, I definitely will be getting the retro indie figures. I like the look of them. I don't own any of the original vintage ones, but I've always had my eye on them. I never had them as a kid, but I've always, admired the card backs from afar and what have you. So I'm definitely going to be getting hold of those, even though the figure quality's definitely not on par with the original Kenner versions. In terms of the retro for this year, I'm pretty sure there is a second wave of Return of the Jedi. Yes, absolutely. And in terms of new media, I think there is going to be a new media set of figures, but I don't think it's going to be Mando or Book of Boba Fett. So I'll leave that with you to guess which one it will be. Alright then folks, that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching, and as I mentioned before, if you do have a question for next week's episode, leave the question in the comment section below and hopefully I will get round to featuring your question in the video. Thank you all for watching. As I said, thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members, and we shall see you on the next one.